Alrighty, welcome. We're going to be talking about variation. And what happens is variables can be related to each other three different ways. The first way is direct variation, inversely, jointly. And we have to also make sure we know that K is the constant of variation. That's going to be standard throughout each one of the variations, that K is a constant of variation. So now our equation is y equals kx. So that is our equation. And so basically what happens is if one variable increases, the other variable is going to also increase. If one variable decreases, then the other one is going to decrease. So now what we have to do is we can also find out our k, our constant of variation, by dividing y over x. So you can manipulate your equation to get it by itself. So now examples of constant of variation is y equals 2x, or you could also see it as f of x is equal to 3x. Okay? And also another way that you can recognize it is if you have 5 is equal to y over x. So that's how you can actually find out what your constant of variation is, by dividing your y by your x. And inverse variation is y equals k over x. So direct is your multiplying, inverse is your divide. Now, if you wanted to find out what your k is, you would basically have to multiply your x on both sides. So to get k alone, right? So your k is equal to xy. So now here are some examples. So y equals 3 over x. So you could also have f of x is equal to 5 over x. Okay? And also you might see it as xy is equal to 8. So what could happen is for inverse is if one variable increases, the other one is going to decrease. It's the opposite. So for jointly, you might see it as z is equal to k x y. Now, if you wanted to get k by itself, you would take your x and y and divide it on both sides. So z is divided by x, y. So my examples, you could see it as z is equal to 4xy with your constant of variation as 4. Or you could also see it with different letters. Let us make this a D. And let's make this an M. Okay? So again, K is your constant of variation. You got to make sure that you put that in. So now what we want to do is we want to see if one of these is a direct, inverse, or joint, or neither. So now what we have to do is let's take a look at my variables. Number 1. So if you take a look at it, this right here is 3, right? And then you have your variables on opposite sides and you're multiplying. So that's why it is direct. And now your K, your constant of variation is 3. Now number 2, if you take a look at it, do you see how your variables are on the same side and it's multiplied? So when you see that, you know that's going to be your inverse variation. And so then your k is equal to 0.5. Now, if you take a look at number 3, you notice it does not look like any of those, so that's why it's going to be neither. And number 4 is an inverse variation, and your k is equal to 2. So now what we have to do is we need to write the equation for each of the variable variation described. So it says y varies directly with the cube of 3. So whenever you see the word varies directly, that's going to be where your k is. So w is equal to k. And now directly means that your variable is going to be multiplied. And it says the cube, so it has to be to the third power. That's all you got to do. Now, I'm going to look at number 2. It says varies jointly. That's where the equals k goes. So q is equal k, a, b. And number 3, it says z varies directly, so that's where you put the equals k. So z equals k with x directly means you multiply. And inversely with the product. Inversely, this part means that inverse, that the variables will go on the bottom. And since it's this product, you're going to multiply the two of them together. Now, what we want to do is we want to write down the equations that relate the variables. So now what we're going to do is we have numbers. So it says the variables vary, x and y vary directly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with your equation. So y equals kx. So now what you can do is we have two sets of information. We have x equals 20, y equals 35. And then my next part, it says we want to find the value of x when y equals 50. So now what we're going to do first is you want to find out what your k is. So we're going to use our information. 35 is your y. We don't know what k is, but we know what my x is. So what we're going to do is we're going to find our k value. So you divide on both sides. So my k is equal to 35 over 20, but we can reduce my fraction. So that's going to be 7 over 4. So we found k. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write down my equation. So all we're going to do is, since we found k, now we're going to use k. That is your equation. So your equation is with your x and your y, and then you plug in the numbers in for your variation. So that's your equation. If it says write down the equation relating the variables, that's what you would do. And now what we're going to have to do is we need to actually find the value of x. So now what we can do is use the equation to find x. So my y is 50. I don't know, well, I know what my k is, 7 over 4, but I don't know what my x is. So you're going to multiply both sides by 4 over 7. And then you can type it into your calculator, and you find out that x equals 200 over 7. Number 2, it says that your... Okay, so now what I can do is I'm going to clear my thing so you can see the next one. It says the variables vary inversely. So we're going to first find out my equation. So in order to find out your equation, okay, or whatever your k value is, all right, so what we can do is write y equals k over x. And now we're going to substitute the values in to find out whatever my k is. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. So k is equal to 24. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write down my equation. Y equals 24 over x. So that is my equation that relates the variables. And so now I'm going to write that. That's my equation. And basically your equation is just finding k and then plugging it in. And then what we need to do is we need to find out y. So y equals, you're going to take 24, that's your k, divided by my x. So y equals negative 6. Number 3. So now it says the variables z varies jointly with x and y. So now we're going to use the variables 1, 2, and 7 to write the equation that relates them. So z varies jointly, so that means they're all joined together. So now all we're going to do is plug in the information that I know to find out whatever my k is. And then we'll use k. So 7 is equal to k times 2. Divide by 2. So k equals 7 over 2. So we found k. Now what we're going to do is to get my equation. So my equation is z equals 7 over 2 x y. So that is my equation, and now my next part says find x. So we're going to plug in the numbers that we know. -4 is your z, is equal to 7 over 2 multiplied by x, multiplied by -3. And then we're going to basically just solve it. Okay, so you simplify this. So now you get x equals -8 over 21. So again, equation relating the variables and then finding the value. So make sure you know the difference between the two. So now what we want to do, it says, same thing. It says the variables vary jointly. Okay. I use the given values to write down an equation and then find out z for both of them. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, it's z, remember, varies jointly. Z equals k x y. So now what we're going to do is plug in the numbers that I have. So 7 is equal to k x y. So now we got to simplify whatever I can. 7 is equal to 2k. Divide both sides by 2. So k equals 7 over 2. So now I have z is equal to 7 over 2 x y. So that is my equation. And so now what we're going to do is plug in the numbers that I have. So z is equal to 7 over 2 x, which is -2, and then y is 5. So we found my equation. So this is my equation. And now we get to the part that says find z. So we take that and we plug it in, and we should get, when you type it in the calculator, -35. So we found the value. Letter B. So now what we're going to do is the same thing. You're going to plug in the numbers into the equation. So now we're going to find k. So if you do the math, you're going to get k is equal to -2. So my equation is z equals -2xy. So that is my equation relating the variables. And now what we need to do is, it says find z. So that's my equation. And now we need to find the value. Okay? So z equals -2. X is -2. And my y is 5. And I get 20. The price P of a diamond is directly proportional to the square of W. If 1 carat diamond costs $200, find the price of 7 carat diamond. All right, so now these are word problems applying the equations. So what I like to do is I read the question and I see that they gave us the variables, and I underline the part with the variation, and it says weight square of weight W. So P varies directly, so that's your K, and that means whatever comes next, you're going to multiply it. So be W squared. So that is our equation. If a 1 carat diamond costs $200, so that is the price, $200. I don't know what K is, okay? And my weight is 1 squared. So now what we're going to do is you're going to solve and figure out what your K is. So K is equal to 200. So now what we're going to do is we can find K. And now for the next part, we're going to use K, whatever it is, to find it. So we plug it in. So the next part, it says find the price, which I don't know. I know my K was 200 for when I had it. And my weight is 0.7, so it's 0.7 squared. So then you solve it, and you should get P is equal to $98. So that's how much it would cost, okay, for a 0.7 carat diamond. Okay. So it says if B varies directly with C and inversely with A, when A equals 2, B equals 6, and C equals 3, what does C equal? So B varies directly with C. Varies directly, that part is always the equal K. Indirectly means that I have to have a multiplied. And inversely with A. So that means that part goes on the bottom. Whenever you see inversely, the next variable goes in the denominator. So now what we want to do is we're going to plug in the information that I have. So we always have to find K first. So then you find K, and then you're going to use K. So I got 6 is equal to K, 3 over 2. So now we can actually solve that, and you can find out that K. So you can multiply by 2 on both sides and then divide by 4. So our K value, our constant of variation, is 4. So now what we're going to do is we found K, and now we got to use K in order to find out my next piece of information. So that's what the equation would be to relate the variables. So now what you're going to do is plug in what we have. So what 10 equals 4. And then your C is, that's what we want to try to find out. And your B is, your A is 3. So then what we can do is you're going to solve that. So I can multiply by 3 on both sides. And then you're going to divide by 4. So your C is equal to 30 over 4. Or it can be reduced to 15 over 2, which you should do. Make sure you reduce. Number 7. The width W of a container varies directly as the depth and inversely with its height. So W varies directly with the depth and inversely with the height. Now it says if the width is 50 centimeters when the depth is 100 centimeters and the height is 75 centimeters, find the height when the width is 100 centimeters and the depth is 200. So we wrote down our equation, and now of course we have to find K. So we're going to plug in the variables in the appropriate spots. So my depth is D, so that's where the 100 goes. And then the height, so height was inversely, so that's why 75 goes on the bottom. So now what we have to do is we find K. So then you solve. So I get K is equal to 37.5. Okay? And then now what we're going to do is we're going to use K. So we found K, and now we have to use K. So W is equal to 37.5 D all over H. So that is how you relate the variables. So we found K, and now we're going to use K. So now what we have to do is plug in the information. So W is 100, and then 37.5 all over H. And then when you solve it, you basically, your H is going to be 75 centimeters. All right, and we got to make sure that we use our units. And number 8, it says the variable Z varies inversely as the variable M. If Z is 200 when M equals 10, what is the constant of variation? All you need to do is find out what your K is. So you have two options. So Z equals K over M. So all we want to do is find out the constant of variation. Now, if you remember, you can also just do K is equal to ZM. You can do it either way. It's going to give you the same result. All right, so K is going to be equal to 220 times 10, and K equals 200. And that is your final answer. So remember, whenever you do this, you have to identify what the variables are. Whoopsie, you do not want to see that. All right. So now you want to see what the variables are. And also, you want to be able to identify what the equations are. Whether it is, just to recap, just make sure they're all on the same page. So your equation, it could be y equals kx Or you need to be able to recognize that it could be k is equal to y over x. Inverse, okay? So y equals k over x. So I got xy is equal to k. And joint variation is y equals, it doesn't actually remember, there we go. So z is equal to k x y. So now if you want to get k, so be k is equal to z over x y. So those are the different ways that you need to make sure you identify variation. Okay? Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.